Hi friends, today I want to tell you about Saint Teresa of Avila. Saint Teresa of Avila, also known as Saint Teresa of Jesus, was a Spanish Carmelite nun, mystic, reformer, and writer. She is one of the greatest saints in the Catholic Church and is remembered for her deep spiritual life and her efforts to renew religious communities. Early life. Teresa was born on March 28, 1515 in Avila, Spain, to a devout Christian family. As a child, she loved reading stories about the lives of saints and dreamed of dedicating her life to God. At the age of 20, she entered the Carmelite convent of the Incarnation in Avila. While living in the convent, Teresa struggled with illness and periods of spiritual uncertainty. Through prayer and reflection, she experienced a profound conversion that strengthened her faith. She came to believe that prayer is personal conversation with God and the foundation of spiritual growth. Teresa noticed that many convents had become less strict in following their religious rules. She believed that nuns should have lived simple, spend more time in prayer, and avoid unnecessary comforts and distractions. With determination, she founded new convents that followed these ideals. Although she faced criticism and opposition, she remained committed to her mission. Her work became known as Carmelite Reform, and she worked closely with John of the Cross to extend these reforms. Teresa wrote several influential books that explain the spiritual life in a clear and practical way. Her best known work include The Interior Castle, describes the soul as a castle with many rooms, showing the stages of growing closer to God. The Way of Protection offers practical guidance on prayer, humility, and community life. The Book of Her Life, an autobiography describing her experiences, struggles, and spiritual journey. Her writings are admired for their honesty, wisdom, and practical advice. Saint Teresa taught that prayer is like having a close friendship with God. Humility and trust are essential for spiritual growth. Love should be shown through actions, not only words. Patience, perseverance, and faith help people overcome difficulties. Every person is called to grow in holiness through daily life. Death. Teresa died on October 4, 1582, while traveling to visit one of the convents she had founded. She was canonized as a saint in 1622. In 1970, she became the first woman to be declared a doctor of the church, recognizing the lasting importance of her spiritual teachings. Saint Teresa of Avila continues to inspire people around the world through her writings and example. She is remembered for her courage, wisdom, deep faith, and commitment to help others grow spiritually. Her message that anyone can develop a close relationship with God through sincere prayers, humility, and love remains relevant today. Teresa of Avila is one of the most influential saints in Christian history. She was a reformer, mystic, author, and teacher whose life transformed the Carmelite order and left a lasting impact on Christian spirituality. Her courage, wisdom, and deep relationship with God continue to inspire people around the world. She was born on March 28, 1515, in the city of Avila, Spain, in a noble and deeply religious family. Her father, Alonso Sanchez, was known for his honesty and strong faith, while her mother, Patrice, encouraged Teresa to read religious books and stories about the saints. As a young girl, Teresa loved reading about saints and martyrs inspired by their culture, by their courage. She once tried to leave home with her brother to become a martyr for Christ, but they were brought back by their family. Although this childhood adventure ended quickly, it revealed her early desire to dedicate her life to God. When Teresa was 14 years old, her mother died. This loss deeply affected her, and she prayed to the Virgin Mary, asking her to become her spiritual mother. At the age of 20, Teresa entered the Carmelite convent of the Incarnation in Avila. Her father was initially opposed to her decision, but Teresa believed God was calling her to religious life. Soon after entering the convent, she became seriously ill. She suffered from paralysis and severe pain for several years and was even thought to be dead at one point. These years of illness taught her patience, endurance, and dependence on God. After slowly recovering, she continued to struggle with balancing prayer and worldly distractions. Around the age of 39, Teresa experienced a profound spiritual awakening while praying before an image of the suffering Christ. She felt deeply moved by God's love and realized she wanted to dedicate her life completely to Him. She began spending more time in silent prayers and experiencing moments of deep contemplation. Teresa described prayer not as repeating many words but as a close sharing between friends. It means taking time frequently to be alone with Him who knows, love us. This understanding of prayer became the foundation of her spiritual teaching. Teresa reported having many mystical experiences, including visions of Christ, experience of her God presence, and moments of spiritual ecstasy. One of the most famous events in her life is known as transverbration, in which she described an angel piercing her heart with a golden spear filled with divine love. She explained that this experience filled her with both intense joy and deep love for God. Artists later portrayed this even in paintings and sculptures, making it one of the best known episodes from her life. During Teresa's time, many Carmelite convents had become comfortable and less strict in observing their religious rules. Teresa believed that religious communities should return to simplicity, poverty, silence, prayer, and discipline. In 1562, she founded her first Reformed convent, Joseph Convent in Avila. This community follows stricter rules emphasizing a simple lifestyle, regular prayer and meditation, silence and contemplation, poverty and humility, strong community life. Many people opposed her reforms. Some believed her ideas were too strict, while others criticized her as a woman taking leadership in the church. Despite these challenges, Teresa remained determined. Over the next 20 years, she traveled throughout Spain, often under difficult conditions, founding 17 reformed convents. She worked closely with John of the Cross, who helped establish similar reforms for Carmelite monks. Teresa was not only a saint but also an outstanding writer. She wrote in a clear, honest, and practical style that made complex spiritual ideas understandable. Her major works include the book of her life, her autobiography describing her childhood, struggles, illness, conversion, and mystical experiences. The Way of Perfection, advice for her fellow nuns on prayer, humility, love, and living in community. The Interior Castle, her famous work explaining that the human soul is like a beautiful castle with many rooms. As people grow in prayer and holiness, they move in deeper into the castle until they reach complete union with God. Foundation, an account of establishing the Reformed Carmelite convent and the challenges she faced. These books remain spiritual classics and are studied by Christians, theologians, and scholars around the world. Her teachings, like Saint Teresa, emphasize several important lessons like prayer is a loving friendship with God, humility is the foundation of spiritual growth, true holiness is shown through love and service to others, patience and perseverance help overcome difficulties, trust in God brings peace even during suffering, growth in faith happens gradually through daily commitment. She also reminds people that spiritual experience are less important than a living a life of clarity, charity, kindness, and obedience to God. Teresa died on October 4, 1582, while traveling to another convent because of a calendar change taking place at that time. Her feast day is celebrated on October 15. She was declared a saint in 1622 and in 1970 Paul VI proclaimed her a doctor of the church, making her one of the first women to receive this title. This honor recognizes the exceptional value of her teachings for the whole church. Saint Teresa of Avila is remembered as a courageous reformer who renewed religious life. a gift writer whose books continue to guide readers, a great teacher of prayer and contemplation, a woman of remarkable leadership during a time when women had limited public influence, a model of faith, perseverance, humility, and love. Today, her writings are read by people of many Christian traditions, and her example continues to encourage those seeking a deeper spiritual life. Her central message remains timeless. Through faithful prayer, humility, trust, and love, every person can grow closer to God and live a life of holiness. Teresa was an outstanding leader. She demonstrated excellent organizational ability, practical wisdom, strong communication skill, courage under pressure, sense of humor, compassion, patience, firm decision making. Even while directing convents, writing books, and traveling across Spain, she remained approachable and caring towards around her. Teresa was canonized in 1622. Her influence continued to grow for centuries. In 1970, Paul VI declared her the Doctor of the Church, recognizing that her writings provide enduring guidance for Christians throughout the world. Today, she is also honored as one of the patron saints of Spain. Her writings have inspired Christian theologians, religious communities, historians, psychologists interested in religious experiences, literary scholars, ordinary readers seeking spiritual guidance. Her books have been translated into many languages and remain among the most widely read works of Christian spirituality. She teaches a sincere relationship with God begins with daily prayer. Holiness grows through ordinary acts of love and faithfulness. Difficulties and suffering can deepen trust in God. Leadership should be rooted in humility and service. Reform begins with changing ourselves before trying to change others. Perseverance is essential when facing obstacles. True spirituality always leads to greater kindness and compassion. Saint Teresa of Avila stands as one of the history's greatest example of faith, courage, and spiritual wisdom. Despite illness, criticism, and hardship, she remained faithful to her calling through her reforms, writings, and personal example. She renewed religious life and taught generations of believers how to cultivate a close relationship with friendship with God. Her legacy continues to shape Christian spirituality, and her teachings on prayer, humility, perseverance, and love remain relevant centuries after her death. She reminds us that holiness is not reserved for a few extraordinary people, but is a lifelong journey open to everyone who seeks God with sincerity, trust, and love. At 20 years of age, Teresa entered the Carmelite convent of the Incarnation against her father's wish. Life inside the convent differed from what she had expected because the convent was large and visitors were uncommon. There were frequent conversations and social activities. There, Teresa appreciated friendship but gradually realized that constant distractions weakened her prayer life. She therefore sought a deeper relationship with God through silence and meditation. Soon after entering the convent, Teresa became gravely ill. She suffered from severe fevers, chronic pain, and temporary paralysis. At one point, her condition became so critical that people believed she had died. Preparations for her burial even began before signs of life returned. Her recovery was slow and incomplete. For years, she experienced weakness and pain. Rather than becoming bitter, Teresa viewed suffering as an opportunity to rely more fully on God's strength. For nearly 20 years, Teresa struggled with inconsistency in prayer. Everything changed when she reflected deeply on Christ's suffering, looking at an image of Jesus after his scorching. She felt overwhelmed by the God's love and mercy. She decided to give herself completely to God. From that day onward, she committed herself to daily mental prayer, careful self examination, humility, and loving service. This conversation marks the beginning of the most productive period of her life. She described prayer as a close sharing between friends. It means taking time frequently to be alone with Him who we know loves us. According to Teresa, prayers involved listening to God, speaking honestly to God, trusting Him in every circumstance, reflecting on Scripture, allowing God to transform one's heart, growing in love and virtue. She thought that everyone, not only priests or religions, can develop a deep sense of prayer. Her legacy continues to shape Christian spirituality, and her teachings on prayer, humility, perseverance, and love remain relevant centuries after her death. She reminded us that holiness is not reserved for a few extraordinary people, but is a lifelong journey open to everyone who seeks God with sincerity, trust, and love. Saint Teresa of Avila stands as one of history's greatest examples of faith, courage, and spiritual wisdom. Despite illness, criticism, and hardship, she remained faithful for her calling. Through her reforms, writings, she renewed religious life and taught generations of believers how to cultivate a close friendship with God. Thank you for listening. Thank